I am so excited to finally be back out in the garden. We have spent pretty much all of August in the kitchen, preserving all of the foods that have come in from this jungle of a garden. It's an absolute mess out here, but we are gonna do our August garden tour, and I'm not gonna lie, it's an absolute mess. August kept me busy in the kitchen. My kids went back to school. I also work outside of the home, and so my garden has been pretty much completely neglected. I have come out here to water every few nights, but other than that, it has been left to itself, and although it's a huge mess, there are weeds everywhere. It has still been so highly productive, and I'm excited to show you the space. It's really hard as a gardener and as someone who's putting herself out here and showing you all of this, to not come out here first and spend a full day weeding and cleaning up, but I'm not gonna do that. I want to show you the true picture because I know that my garden is not the only one whose garden looks like this. It is not a perfect, weed-free, beautiful space anymore, but it is a space that grows food for my family, and I want to show you what that looks like. Now, as we tour the garden today, we're also going to talk about what I'm going to do different for my garden in 2025 next year, because it doesn't matter how long you garden, you probably make changes every single year. I know that I do. I don't know if that's a little bit of ADHD brain, or just my indecisiveness, or the fact that I get bored if something stays the same. But I just like to change it up every year, and I'm going to change it up quite a bit next year. So we're going to go ahead and talk through that today as well. Also, I'm super excited because I started this YouTube journey with you at the very beginning of the year, like when we were still starting all of these seeds in my basement. And now is the end of August, so I have been with you for an entire garden season. Here in Southwest Missouri, our garden season is pretty much ending now. You'll see as we walk through the garden, you're gonna see lots of dead, lots of brown. Our first average frost date is October 20th. So although I still have 2 months of growing season, for the most part, my garden is dying back at this point. And so we're just gonna walk through and give you a full, raw, real view of what that looks like here in my garden. So this is currently the state of the tunnel. It is pretty wild in here. I will say it's definitely not as full as I was hoping it would be, and I have some really big plans for it next year. But even still, it is gorgeous and it has a lot of food in it. So let's walk through and see what we can find. So in the very front of my trellis, there's absolutely nothing except a tree that needs pulled out. These trees are so hard to get out too. They get big roots. Anyways, I'm gonna have to cut that out. But what I did here, and you can see it, is I put in watermelon seed. But obviously I did this too late, and there was not enough sun in this area, and it just didn't thrive. I did have a huge sunflower here. I have pulled it out and fed it to my chickens because it looked like this, and they really love to eat those sunflower seeds. But it was just giving a lot of shade to this area, and so unfortunately that watermelon did not grow. On this side I put melons as well, but same as the other side, they weren't able to produce anything or grow well because of lack of sunlight. As you walk through this trellis, the majority of what you see are these Asian long beans. I have the red varieties, and I have green varieties as well. You can tell these are dry. I'm going to actually use these for soup beans. I'm letting them all dry on the pod. We ate our fair share of fresh ones, but I decided to just let these dry and put them back for soup for the winter time. You also see a ton of these zucchini rampicante. This one is nice and gold and cured and pretty close. I can still make a dent in it with my fingernail. Once you can't do that, they are ready for storage. I have so many of these zucchini rampicante growing this year. My storage is going to be filled up. I think I'm also going to cube some up and can them to use as like a pumpkin replacement. And then ones that are like this size and still super green, are perfect just to eat as squash and zucchini, and since I'm not getting a lot of that right now, I may harvest some of those to eat this week. The stunner of this trellis this year has really been these scarlet runner beans. Let me take you to the outside. All right, from the outside of the trellis, you can see how absolutely gorgeous these beans are. I had thought about tearing them down because they weren't being super productive, but they are just constantly, you can see one right there, swarmed by bees and hummingbirds, and so I decided to go ahead and leave them, and I'm so glad that I did because they have the most beautiful beans and they make excellent soup beans. So when your pods are completely dry, this is what the beans look like. They're black with like purple specks. They're really pretty and they're big beans. But look what they look like before they are cured. It's a beautiful, the color's not even showing very good in camera, but it's hot pink. And it really just stands out against that green pod. They are so pretty. Now these pods are tough and fibrous and they have like a hair to them, so they're not something you would want to eat like a green bean. But these are going to make a really delicious soup bean for us this winter. If you remember back to the springtime, this trellis was completely covered in sugar snap peas. And although we love those and we ate and ate and ate from them, it really delayed getting the rest of this trellis up. And so the plants that I have in the beds beside the trellis were already growing pretty well. And I feel like they shaded out a lot of my seeds that I had put in. So next year, when I plant out this trellis, although I am still going to be planting sugar snap peas because we love to snack on them when we're in the garden, and I love to throw them in meals, I will be very much limiting those to probably one of my smaller trellises and only doing one side. I feel like that'll still give us plenty for fresh eating, and I don't really do a lot of preserving with those sugar snap peas. I want to use this trellis though as an area where I can just have like the fullest, most beautiful, I want it covered. Like I don't want any sun shining through this trellis. I also let volunteer sunflowers come up along the sides, and while they're beautiful, I don't think I'm going to let that happen next year either, because when they get full and big, these are multi-head sunflowers, they cast a lot of shade on the garden beds below. So I think I'm going to limit my sunflowers to the front of my garden, and then I haven't 100% decided if I'm going to do that flower bed again next year. I probably will, so I'll probably limit my sunflowers to those two areas. In these beds next year though, that run alongside my trellis, I want melons. I planted melons this year and I did not even get a single one. One, because cucumber beetles have been a huge problem for me, so we're going to talk about how we're going to try and get rid of that issue. But also because of the shade that we talked about. By the time I put those seeds in, when the sugar snap peas were done, they were just really shaded out by the peppers and everything else that I had growing in the beds on the side. So they're going to go out at the very beginning of the year, around the end of April next year, so that they have time to just really overtake this whole trellis and hopefully give us a huge production of melons. Honeydew is my favorite, so that's what we're going to do a lot of. But I'll probably also go in with smaller varieties of watermelon and that Kajari melon and just a few other random ones. I'm thinking this is going to be a full-on melon trellis next year though. As far as those stinking cucumber beetles, like I said, I have struggled with them, not just this year, but many years in the past. They take out any cucumber plants that I put in, and then they really do a lot of damage to my melons and my squash and my zucchini. And I've tried so hard to not use any pesticides or any chemicals in this garden. I want it to be as organic as possible. But I think because I have struggled so hard this year at the end of the season, when all my plants are out, I'm going to treat this trellis area because that's where the majority of my cucumber beetles are. First, I'm going to treat it with a few different organic options, which I didn't even use this year because I still didn't want anything on my food. But if I'm still seeing beetles, I will go in with something harder and not organic, because anything I have tried has not. This year I tried insecticidal soap, and I have smushed 1,000 cucumber beetles. I've looked for eggs, but I've just been really unsuccessful because the huge amount of beetles that there are. So I am ready to just fully end that problem, kind of at all stakes at this point. So moving on from the inside of the trellis, coming towards the outside beds. This whole bed here is fully loaded with jalapenos, or what was supposed to be complete jalapenos. I'm sure many of you know about Peppergate. And so I have some of these peppers right here. You can see they're a longer pepper. Obviously not a jalapeno. They're not spicy. I don't know what they are. And these are what I used when I canned Rotel. They taste good, they're crunchy, and they're really prolific, but I have no idea what they are. The rest of this bed, though, is jalapenos, and they have been so fruitful this year. I have made several batches of cowboy candy. I've made lots of salsa. I have done stuffed jalapenos, and I have done jalapeno hot sauce. So I've been able to make a lot of things. These are full and ready for another pick today. So they will be on my preserving schedule again for tomorrow. I do have a full day of canning tomorrow, so make sure to check back and come find that video. I'm looking to do definitely jalapenos, whatever else I see in the garden that's ready today. And I'm going to go to our local orchard and get some fresh peaches so that I can can up a whole bunch of those as well. I grew 3 different varieties of jalapenos this year. These are the Megatron. They are my huge stuffing jalapenos. These are my early jalapenos. And these early jalapenos, guys, are absolutely just loaded. I don't know if you can tell how many jalapenos are in here, but there are a lot. I also have a pumpkin spice jalapeno. I'm trying to find it. I don't see any of those pumpkin spice ones ready right now, but they are a pretty small jalapeno that are bright orange. They are very hot though, so I've been using those in super moderation because I am a wimp with anything spicy. Following these jalapenos comes to my little herb section. This is oregano. It's a perennial and it comes back in my garden every single year. These are oregano flowers. I also have just a random jalapeno here that didn't fit with the rest. I have some parsley hiding back here. And I had some rosemary in here as well, although I think it kind of got smothered out by all of that oregano. I want to show you these jalapenos. Look how absolutely loaded. This is just one plant. There are so many peppers on here. You see though how my jalapenos are all just kind of laying down. That's something I'm going to do a better job at next year when I plant, is to stake these from the beginning, because it's so hard to imagine how big your plants are going to get when you're putting them in. When you started them from a tiny little seed and you end up with this massive plant, my mind just never can. It doesn't matter how many times I do it. My mind can never like grasp hold of how big that plant is going to be and the support that it's going to need to stand up. So next year I am going to be sure to go in at the very beginning and put in stakes or tomato panels or something, some kind of support structure for all of my pepper plants so they aren't just sprawled all over the ground. Although they have grown fine sprawled all over the ground, they are harder to pick and harder to see how many peppers I have. So I really just want them up off the ground for next year. Following that, we come to some squash and zucchini that I put in, and you see I am starting to have squash bug problems. I have been out here actually, that's a leaf-footed bug, but I'm pretty sure those are squash bug babies, but they could be leaf-footed bug babies as well. I'm not sure. Either way, they are a pest, and so I've been coming out every day and trying to pick them all off. I haven't put any chemicals on there, and I'm not going to, but they are all over my plants. So I do maybe need to be better about coming out here more frequently and getting them all off. And look, I just saw something. I have my first golden egg squash from this planting. So We planted these probably, it's been about a month. I planted those in there after I cleared this bed from my broccoli and cauliflower. And so I'm excited to start having more squash and zucchini in the garden. Next is this beautiful sage plant. It has not been bothered. Like, it doesn't care if I let it get dry. It doesn't care if it gets shaded. It just keeps growing and is beautiful and smells so good. And then we have our paprika peppers. You can tell that I need to come out here and pick. Like I said, I have been neglecting the garden. But these peppers are beautiful. What I'm doing with those is smoking them and dehydrating them and turning them into my own smoked paprika powder. I got those seeds from M.I. Gardener. And when I personally think of paprika powder, I don't think of something spicy. But I will tell you that these are spicy peppers. I'm still using them like in my taco seasoning and in my cooking as a powder. But it is hotter than I had intentioned in my mind. While we're out here, I want to talk to you guys about these awesome boots that I have been wearing in my videos lately. I've been wearing them for about 3 months, 2 to 3 months now, because I wanted to make sure that I loved them before I showed them to you. These are high C boots, and this company was kind enough to send me these and a pair for my husband and daughter as well. I will show you those in future videos, but we all absolutely love them. This company is based out of California. These boots are American made and they are so comfortable. They keep my feet safe and clean while I'm out in my garden. They do not make me too hot, and they're supposed to actually keep your feet really warm as well in the winter, although I have not been able to try that out yet. But they are waterproof as well, and my feet do stay very dry in these shoes no matter if I am walking through mud puddles or watering the garden. These shoes have a 100-year lifetime warranty. They have great customer service, and overall, they're just a really nice, comfortable boot to wear in the garden. If you want to order these boots and get a discount, I'm going to put an affiliate link for you in the description of this video. Make sure to use that in the promo code box, and you will get 15% off a pair of boots for yourself. Following those paprika peppers, we have another trellis of zucchini rampicante. And you see a lot of dead and brown in there, especially on this other side of the trellis over there. That just happened this week. So one of my plants have obviously died, probably to vine borer. Now, zucchini rampicante are vine borer resistant. That doesn't mean they won't be taken out by a vine borer. But as you can see, they last a lot longer than some of my other squash and zucchini that I'm going to show you here in a minute. Around here, it's not if your plants are going to be killed by those vine borers, but when. And so, although that plant is dead, I was able to get a lot of fruit off of it. So I am totally okay. Let me show you how huge some of these rampicante are. Also, before I show you, look at this. This was one plant, so it covered both sides of the trellis, and then it escaped, and it is just covering. Look at all of that. Half of my garden. So this is a massive plant. And with that massive plant come massive produce. Look at this. This is one zucchini rampicante. It is huge. That is going to make a lot of food for us. And it's not like there's just 1 or 2 or even 5 or 10. Like, they are everywhere. And they're sprawling all over the ground as well. The next one we come to are our bell peppers. This year has been a good bell pepper year, but it hasn't been anything like last year. I am still harvesting lots of beautiful bell peppers, and my plants are loaded. Like, there's a lot of food in here. But last year, as I was getting them by the handful, and this year I'm only harvesting like once a week. So big difference, and that's just part of having a garden. Some years are going to be really great for one thing, and the next year is not going to be so great at the same exact thing. With the same way that you planted it in the same seeds. I don't know if it's the weather or or what it is really, but gardening comes in seasons, and some things will just thrive one year and not do great the next. That's just part of it. This bed here I did not get replanted when I pulled those potatoes, and it is currently being overtaken by the zucchini rampicante. Oh my goodness. I have been super neglectful, obviously. Look at this. I have a lot of work to come out here and do. The easiest way I have found to kill bugs when they are like that, when they are just completely swarming, my husband has a little handheld torch, and I just come out here and torch those areas just really quickly, not enough to burn the plant, but it kills all of the squash bugs or leaf-footed bugs or whatever they are. They will be completely destroyed, all of them, and I don't have to use anything on my plants, and it doesn't do any damage to my plants. So as soon as I finish with this video today, that is what we're going to be doing. Now, I told you we were going to talk about what is going to look different in this garden for next year. So I did really like growing potatoes in these metal beds, and I'm going to do that again. But I am going to make myself be better about immediately replanting, because I didn't do that this year. And now I just have this complete wasted space. As far as this trellis, this is the trellis that I'm going to do in sugar snap peas. And then when those come out, I will follow that probably with either cucumbers or pole beans. I won't be doing it with rampicante again, because obviously that is just too big of a plant to be held by that small of a trellis. And I don't want it sprawling across my whole garden again. As far as doing something different in this pepper area, and I also have okra growing here as well. The okra is really thriving in this location and doing great. So I will do that again next year, plant my peppers with my okra. But what I am going to do next year is try something different. I have always really packed my garden full of plants, and I haven't given them much space to grow. That's just how I've always grown, because I wanted as much in my garden as possible with the most variety. But I think next year I am going to give my plants some more room. At least probably, I'm going to do not half the plants that are in there, maybe a little bit more than that, but I am going to give them a dramatic amount of more space than I usually do, and just see what happens. That's what's recommended in the first place, but I don't follow recommendations just because I love to have a huge variety in the garden. But I'm curious to see, if I give them more space, if I will have much larger plants that have a ton more fruit on them. So we are going to try that out and just see what happens. I replanted these pots with beans for the fall, and they are, for the most part, looking really beautiful and excellent. For some reason, these front two pots, they only have one. Well, that one has two, but they didn't have good germination. I don't know why. I didn't do anything different. They had the same watering schedule, but those ones don't have many beans in them, whereas these ones are pretty full. I am really looking forward to a fall harvest of beans this year, though. In this area, I put in some butternut squash and a lemon drop watermelon and maybe a spaghetti squash, I think. I put these in right at the exact amount of time that they would need to produce right before our first frost. And the plants, for the most part, especially these two, are looking healthy and beautiful. So I am hoping that I'm going to get some food from this area. This is where my corn was growing before. And that brings us to this next bed. In this very corner, right here, or no, it was over here. And you can see I'm struggling with those bugs here as well. But in that corner, I planted 2 pumpkin seeds. And this is what happened. We have a huge plant. I'm super excited to have pumpkins in the garden. I have never had pumpkins before, but I'm getting several good-sized pumpkins. And so I'm really looking forward to having our own. I don't even remember what variety this is, because I literally just threw the seeds in there one day when they were in my hand. But there are several pumpkins on this plant. I have 4 kids, so I'm hoping that I get at least 4 pumpkins for them. Moving on from that bed, we have this orange accordion tomato that we put in. This tomato was just a test to prove to myself that I had herbicide poisoning in my tomato area. And it did just that. It showed me that the soil here was fine and it wasn't just my plants. So I haven't done a good job of really taking care of it, as I didn't grow it necessarily for food, but just as a test. Following that is a bed that has been not super productive for me this year. I have a good amount of parsley, and this was a broccoli or cauliflower plant that I was trying to let go to seed, but we have just been this is what the seeds look like, the seed pods. We had just been so dry this year, and I did not do a good job of keeping it watered, and so there are no seeds really inside any of those pods. I just need to go ahead and pull that out. This is also the bed that I put my artichokes in, which looked like they died pretty quickly at the beginning of the year, but they must have grown good root systems, because I have 3 of them here that have started growing again for the fall. I'm super excited about that, and I'm really hoping that they will be able to overwinter and come back next spring beautiful and big and full, and we'll be able to harvest some artichokes. At the back of the bed are the most pitiful looking okra I think I've ever seen. I don't know what's going on with these okra plants. They're just small. The leaves are little. They are still giving okra, but just not very many. I planted these from okra seed that I had saved, so I'm just not really sure what's going on with those. Obviously, I should have thinned them out, and I didn't do that, but some of them just have one in a spot, so I don't think that's my only problem. At the front of this bed are Cucamelon peppers, and they have just really been giving us tons of food. We've been eating these for dinner a lot. Again, I should have staked these plants up, and I will do better to do that next year. Behind those, I have 3 eggplant. Every single time that I plant eggplant, I have flea beetles really bad. That's what that little bug is. This is flea beetle damage. But I have actually, for the first time ever, been able to harvest several eggplant. This one looks like it's damaged pretty good. And that one does as well. But we've gotten about 8 really good eggplant off of these plants. So I'm going to call that a success for me, because it's more than I've ever gotten before. Now, I did throw some watermelon seeds and some melon seeds back here about a month ago. You can see they're still tiny and they haven't really done anything. I'm going to just this week pull all of that up. Pretty much all of this bed. I'm going to pull this okra. It's not doing anything. Obviously, I'll leave the artichokes and the peppers. But I'm going to clear the rest and replant carrots for the fall in this bed. The bed behind that has our strawberry plants in it. This needs weeded really well, but these strawberries are looking really good, and I'm hopeful for a great spring harvest. Beside those are our squash and zucchini, and do you see a difference? So about a month ago, the squash and zucchini on this side were dead from vine borer and from squash bugs. I pulled them all out and I replanted so that I would have a fall harvest of squash plants. And look, I'm starting to get some little babies on there. These plants look healthy and beautiful, and these plants are dead, dying, covered in bugs. So I'm going to come out here today, torch all those bugs, and pull all these plants out and replant. I have just at 60 days until my first frost. So I am really going to be pushing it with anything that I put in here. I'm going to go through my squash and zucchini seeds and find the ones that have the lowest number of days until they're ready to harvest, and put those in there and just see what happens. Because sometimes our first frost comes late and we have a little bit more time. So hopefully that will happen this year. And next year when I redo this even if I have some plants that are still going, I'm going to pull them all out at the same time and replant for fall, so that I'm not so rushed for time. And now I just have these empty buckets that are doing absolutely nothing for me except collecting horrible bugs. Olivia had her first volleyball game last night and she absolutely killed it. They won their first game. She got all of her serves. She's just out here resting and hanging out with Grizz until her game tonight. This bed is looking pretty pitiful right now. If you remember back to my July garden tour, there was a squash or zucchini plant right here that was massive. It took up this whole entire area and I couldn't even walk through it. You can still see the remains. But like all zucchini plants in my area, it was taken out by vine borers. This is what vine borers do. They drill a hole through the stem and they eat the whole inside middle. And you are just left with this brittle nothing of a plant that's not able to suck up any nutrients. Now following through the rest of this bed, these are blot peppers. These are my favorite pepper that I have grown in the garden this year, and it will come back every single year. They've been incredibly productive, and they're beautiful, which is, ooh, I don't know what that is. Ah! I'm not a bug fan. But they have just been super productive, beautiful plants. They're really sweet and really thick, and they work just as a bell pepper replacement. In between these next two beds, I have something pretty cool. This is a dahlia, and what's cool about it is that I started it by seed, but not this year. It was started by seed last year. And in my area, dahlias are not able to overwinter, but I didn't pull this out of the ground. I just left it there, kind of out of burnout and laziness at the end of the year, and it still came back. So I think it'll probably make it back every year because last year was a super cold winter. So I'm super excited about that really beautiful flower in the garden. Behind that is this flower bed that we created. It's looking a little bit pitiful right now, I'm going to be honest. My zinnias are still pretty right here, but they are starting to get some powdery mildew just from the change of the seasons. It's turning to fall. That's pretty normal, but we have made so many beautiful bouquets for the house. And then I have some really tall sunflowers. Some of them are still blooming, but you can see the majority of them have died off. I use these as food for my chickens, so I don't mind at all. And I will use these throughout the winter just to supplement their feed and give them something to do. I also here have sweet potatoes. And I've never seen this before. It might be normal. This is my first time growing sweet potatoes. But I did not know that sweet potatoes flowered. And these have the prettiest flowers on them all over the place. They kind of look like morning glories, but they're not. I made sure they are attached to my sweet potato plants. I was super excited because, like I said, this is the first time that I have ever grown sweet potatoes. And I don't know exactly when they're going to be ready, but last night I dug around just to see if there was anything in there yet. And I pulled out the biggest purple sweet potato. So I'll insert a picture of that right here and show it to you. But we're really excited for this harvest and to see how many potatoes we get. I am praying that there are more than just that one in there. This celosia is something that has bloomed all spring and all summer. It has just kept on going. We have some apricot status flower in here. Just some more zinnias. Like I said, they're coming to the end of their life. I have some snapdragons as well. They have bloomed on and off. And then more sweet potatoes back here. In this bed behind the flower garden, I have some thyme. Thyme is a perennial. Ignore all the weeds, guys. I keep saying that, but there are lots. This is a cauliflower, a cheddar cauliflower that I was trying to let go to seed. And strangely, it died, but it never did throw up seed pods. So I don't know what's going on with that. I have lots of dill that I have been collecting seed for all my pickling. I have another squash plant that I put in, and then I have some more okra right here. On the back of this trellis, let me show you. from the back, I have a cucamelon plant. Now these are tiny little cucumbers, which amazingly don't seem to be bothered by the cucumber beetles. And they are little lime flavored crunchy cucumbers. They're delicious. Obviously, you see my daughter back here snacking. This is a favorite part of the garden for the kids. You can pretty much always find them back here eating these little cucamelons. And these okra, unlike the others, are doing really great, and we have been harvesting a ton off of them. That one's ready to go. So we are now on the other side of the trellis on this outside bed, and we have a whole bunch of these Pippin's Golden Honey peppers. They go from this dark purple color to yellow, and when they are ready to eat, I don't know if I have any ripe on here. Well, I have some back here. When they're ready to eat, they turn this really bright, beautiful orange, and they are a really delicious sweet pepper. I have the strangest thing this year. These huge peppers, like, they are almost as tall as I am. These are poblanos, and they have been just really unproductive all summer long. I've gotten like 1 to 2 peppers from them. Until just recently, they really started putting on a ton of flowers. And now, I'm starting to get a decent amount of fruit off of them. So, these are still small, but in the next few weeks, I'm hoping to have a huge harvest of those. And in this front bed, I have the most beautiful and most productive. These are another new pepper to me this year, but they are one that will be in my garden every single year. Look at that beautiful variegated foliage. These are called candy cane peppers, and they start out green and striped with yellow and striped with like a pale, almost white color, and they ripen to this beautiful red. They're really crunchy. They're not super thick-walled, but they're not thin either, and they are just the best snacking pepper. And look at them, like they have just been so productive. They don't care that I have neglected them. And then here I have some yellow Marconis. What we come to next is our 3 rows of tomatoes. This time of the year, every single year, no matter what, my tomatoes get blight. It's just part of the weather here. We are so humid, it seems to not matter if I leave them full and bushy or if I keep them trimmed up really well. It just overtakes every year. And like 3 weeks, I don't know, I've lost track of time. Probably 3 weeks to a month ago, they were looking pretty sad. We've been super dry on top of the blight, and I thought I was done harvesting tomatoes. But just recently, they have just shown up and thrown on a huge amount of new, fresh, beautiful, healthy looking green stems, tons of flowers, tons of little green tomatoes. Now the problem is I don't think they're going to have enough time to fully develop and ripen, which I'm okay with that because we really love green salsa around here, like a salsa verde, but I make it with tomatoes instead of tomatillos. We eat through that on chips and salsa, and I also use it to make enchiladas, and I use it to do like chicken in my crock pot. So I love to can up a ton of that. That's what we will be doing with all of our green tomatoes at the end of the season. But this is what I'm talking about. So you see all this dead, just brown, crispy yellow. And then if you look up, look at all that beautiful, healthy green loaded with tomatoes. I also still have a lot of red tomatoes out here that I am picking. Not enough really to can every day, but if I save them up for the week, I can make small batches of stuff, and that is what I have been doing. By far this year, these Juliet tomatoes have been the most prolific from my garden. And I would say these Alice's Dream are a close second. I wish these Juliet were bigger. I don't like having to take the skin off of them because they're so small, but we have been using them in a ton of canning, and just look at all of these flowers. Like, they're just gonna keep going, and they are loaded with green tomatoes as well. I grow my tomatoes on a cattle panel trellis system. It is up off the ground about a foot, so they're about 5 foot tall, and these tomatoes have well exceeded that, but then they fell over, and so a lot of them I have clipped sideways now. So some of these tomatoes are 10 and 11 feet tall. You see, I still have lots of red in here, and I probably need to come do a harvest today. Actually, I will come do a harvest today because tomorrow is going to be a big canning day again. So I want to get as much out of here as I possibly can. This has been a good tomato year, but not as good, just like the peppers, not as good as last year. So I'm hopeful next year for an even better tomato harvest than I had this year. I don't think I'll do anything different. Well, actually, that's not true. I'm not going to do anything different with my tomatoes. I like them. I have them spaced out at 2 foot. I trim in the beginning, and then I quit trimming until it's time to clean up disease. But I do a lot of interplanting of peppers and basil and cucumbers. And I don't think I'm going to do that next year. I am still going to put in my basil with the tomatoes. But I feel like my peppers don't get enough sun when I do this. So next year I'm going to leave the peppers out of that mix. We are at the end of the garden now, and I am showing you the good and the bad. These were my ground cherries. They are pretty much dead at this point. They haven't looked good for 2 months, and I don't know really what happened. I kept them watered. I kept them fertilized. They almost started to look like they had like pesticide damage, but they shouldn't have because nothing else showed that. And we don't spray anything here, so I don't really know what happened to those, but they are goners. And in this bucket here, I have giant red Marconi peppers. Now, at the beginning of the season, these peppers were true to their name and giant. But now, towards the end, they are much smaller. But they're still delicious, crispy, sweet peppers. I put 3 of them in this lick tub, and they all grew really well here. I also stuck some sweet alyssum in the bottom. My asparagus have went to seed. I just let them do that, and I end up with baby asparagus all over our farm. The birds eat these, and then they poop out these little seeds all over the place, and we end up with baby asparagus, which I am overjoyed with. We love asparagus, and I wish I had more room to make my bed even bigger. This bed towards the end of our garden is the one I keep telling you every garden tour. I'm going to get that cleaned out. I'm going to plant in it. Obviously, it didn't happen. My lettuce has went to seed. My cabbages never really produced great, and they're dying back. I've just been feeding those to the chicken. And this is some lamb's quarter that has gotten massive. But we finally have some cooler weather this week. It's going to rain, and I have a couple days off. So I have made a promise to myself that this week I am going to clear this bed and plant it with spinach for the fall and winter garden. I had really high hopes and good intentions of planting out a bunch of broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage and kale and Brussels sprouts for my fall and winter garden. But if you follow the channel, you know that my whole house got sick, and I got pretty sick, and that was right around the time that I should have got those plants started, and it didn't happen. I'm trying to be okay with that. Nowhere around me sells starts, so I am just going to really go overboard on the fall and winter carrots, lettuce, and spinach to try and make up for my lack of getting those other plants planted, and I will just have to do better next year. If you made it this far, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for hanging out with me in my absolute jungle of a garden. And if you've been here for the whole season, I just want to say thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're here with me. I love being able to share with you, and I hope to continue to do so. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe and join in for the next time, because tomorrow I have a full day of canning happening, and of course I'm going to share it all with you. Until I see you next time, may God bless.